Step 1. Judges enter the courtroom. The judges enter the courtroom and take their seats. Step 2. The clerk announces, "All rise," signaling that everyone should stand as a sign of respect for the judges entering the courtroom.
All rise.
Step 3. Judges are seated. The judges take their seats. Step 4. Chief Judge addresses the courtroom, welcomes everyone, introduces themselves and the other judges, and asks the prosecutor to introduce themselves and their team, including the victim or survivor.
Thank you, please be seated. This is the time and place set for the sentencing of the defendant perpetrator. Is everyone ready to proceed? I am A. I will be your Chief Judge today. On my right is Judge B and on my left is Judge C. Will the prosecutor please introduce her or himself and the team?
Step 5. Prosecutor introduces themselves and their team, including the victim or survivor.
Blah blah blah.
Step 6. Chief Judge asks the defense lawyer to introduce themselves and their team.
Thank you. Will the defense lawyer please introduce herself or himself and the team?
Step 7. Defense lawyer introduces himself or herself and the team, including the defendant or perpetrator.
Blah blah blah.
Step 8. Chief Judge acknowledges the introductions and grants the prosecutor permission to make their statement to the court.
Thank you. Prosecutor, you may proceed. Step 9. Prosecutor makes statement to the court.
Blah blah blah.
Step 10. Chief Judge invites the victim or survivor to make a statement.
Thank you. Would the victim survivor like to make a statement?
Step 11. The victim or survivor makes statement to the court.
Blah blah blah.
Step 12. Judges question the prosecution. The judges have the opportunity to pose questions to the prosecutor and/or victim or survivor.
Blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah.
Step 13. Chief Judge grants the defense lawyer permission to make a statement. Defense lawyer, you may proceed.
Step 14. Defense lawyer makes a statement to the court.
Blah blah blah.
Step 15. Chief Judge invites the defendant or perpetrator to make a statement.
Thank you. Would the defendant perpetrator like to make a statement?
Step 16. Defendant or perpetrator makes a statement.
Blah blah blah.
Step 17. Judges question the defense team. The judges have the opportunity to pose questions to the defense lawyer and/or defendant or perpetrator.
Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah.
Step 18. The Chief Judge announces that the judges will leave for a breakout room to deliberate the appropriate sentence for the case.
Thank you. We will now retire to consider the sentence.
Step 19. The clerk announces, "All rise," signaling that everyone should stand as the judges exit the courtroom to deliberate on the sentence.
All rise.
Step 20. Judges leave the room to consider the sentence. The judges exit the courtroom and move to a breakout room, where they will deliberate on the appropriate sentence for the case. Step 21. Judges return to the courtroom. Judges re-enter the courtroom after concluding their deliberation on the sentence. Step 22. The clerk announces, "All rise," signaling that everyone should stand as a sign of respect for the judges returning to the courtroom.
All rise.
Step 23. Chief Judge instructs them to be seated and announces the sentence, summarizing the factors considered and the decision reached by the judges.
Thank you, please be seated. We have now reviewed the nature of the crime, including the aggravating and mitigating circumstances and the criminal history of the defendant perpetrator. We have considered the statements of counsel and we have read the statements of the victim, survivor, and the defendant perpetrator. Accordingly, we hereby sentence.
Step 24. Chief Judge states the reasons for the sentence so that the defendant, the perpetrator, and the victim, a survivor, understand why the judges have ruled in this way. The associate judges may also provide their reasoning or perspective on the sentence.
Blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah.
Step 25. The Chief Judge formally concludes the sentencing hearing and adjourns the court session.
Thank you. Court is adjourned.
Step 26. As the court session concludes, the clerk announces, "All rise," signaling that everyone should stand as the judges exit the courtroom.
All rise.